You can feel it before you can prove it, that subtle shift in the air when someone who pulled away starts drifting back into your orbit. And the strange part is, the closer she feels, the less she seems willing to admit it. I want you to understand something most men never get taught. Missing someone doesn't always look like reaching out. In fact, the more emotionally guarded a person is, the less direct their signals become. As a psychologist, I've seen this pattern repeat across personalities, ages, and cultures. Distance doesn't erase emotional bonds overnight. Sometimes it intensifies awareness, and awareness quietly reshapes behavior long before words catch up. When a woman begins to miss you but hasn't admitted it, not to you, sometimes not even to herself, her communication style often changes in subtle ways. You might notice brief check-ins that don't seem necessary, a reaction to something you post, a casual question that feels oddly specific. None of it is explicit enough to define, but it creates a quiet reopening of connection. Psychologically, this happens because attachment doesn't switch off like a light. Emotional memory is layered. The brain stores how someone made us feel, not just what happened. When the intensity of distance softens the noise of daily interaction, those emotional imprints can resurface. And when they do, curiosity often returns before vulnerability does. Here's where many men misinterpret the moment. They assume if she misses them, she will clearly say it. But emotional admission requires internal certainty, and certainty takes time. People often test emotional waters indirectly first, looking for safety before risking openness. That's not manipulation, it's self-protection. You might sense a warmth that wasn't there a while ago. Conversations feel a little easier, a little longer. There's less resistance, more presence. Yet at the same time, she may still maintain emotional distance in words. This creates a confusing duality: behavior that leans closer, language that stays neutral. That duality can trigger your own uncertainty. You start wondering if you're imagining it, if you're reading too much into small details. But human connection rarely shifts in dramatic declarations. It shifts in micro-behaviors: attention, responsiveness, tone. These are the early indicators that emotional relevance still exists. Missing someone is rarely just about the person. It's about the version of self that existed with them, how she felt when she laughed with you, the comfort of familiar conversation, the sense of being understood without over-explaining. When those experiences stand out in memory, the mind naturally revisits the source. But here's the crucial part: awareness doesn't equal readiness. A woman can feel the absence of your presence and still be unsure what to do with that feeling. Emotional conflict often lives in that space, part of her leaning toward reconnection, part of her protecting whatever distance was created for a reason. This inner tension can make behavior look inconsistent, even though internally it feels very real. What I want you to notice isn't just whether she reaches out. Notice the energy behind interactions. Is there curiosity? A softness in tone? A willingness to keep the conversation alive instead of letting it fade? Emotional shifts often reveal themselves through effort, not declarations. Men who navigate this moment well don't rush to label it. They don't demand clarity prematurely or try to force a confession. They stay grounded, present, observant. Because when someone is processing their feelings, pressure doesn't accelerate honesty. It usually delays it. Safety, not urgency, creates emotional openness. There's also something deeply human happening here. Missing someone reminds us that connection leaves traces. No matter how logical a decision to create distance might have been, emotions don't operate on pure logic. They ebb, resurface, reconsider. And sometimes the realization arrives quietly. The absence feels louder than expected. If you can learn to recognize this phase without trying to control it, you step into a different kind of confidence. You're not chasing reassurance, and you're not closing yourself off either. You're simply aware, letting reality reveal itself instead of trying to script it. Because when someone begins to feel your absence, the story doesn't restart with words. It restarts with attention. When someone starts missing you but can't admit it, the first place it shows up isn't in what they say, it's in how present they suddenly become. Presence is the currency of emotional interest. People instinctively invest attention where their feelings quietly return. You might notice conversations that used to feel brief now linger a little longer. Replies arrive with more thought behind them. There's a subtle shift from polite interaction to genuine engagement. Psychologically, this happens because emotional relevance reactivates curiosity. When someone begins thinking about you more often, their brain naturally seeks small ways to reconnect without fully exposing why. One of the clearest signs is increased responsiveness paired with emotional caution. She's there, she's engaged, but she doesn't step fully into vulnerability yet. This isn't contradiction. It's pacing. The mind often tests emotional safety before the heart allows openness. And when someone isn't ready to verbalize what they feel, they communicate through consistency instead. Another pattern appears in the way memories resurface. She might casually reference something you shared in the past, a joke, a place, a moment that seemed small at the time. Memory recall isn't random. The brain retrieves emotionally charged experiences more easily, especially when those feelings are being reconsidered. When shared moments re-enter conversation, it often signals that those experiences still carry emotional weight. You may also sense a softer tone. Even through text, emotional warmth has a texture. More nuance, more attentiveness, fewer abrupt endings. Tone reflects emotional state more than words do. When someone feels indifferent, communication feels functional. When they feel connected, communication feels alive. That aliveness is hard to fake because it comes from genuine engagement. Here's where emotional intelligence matters. Many men interpret renewed attention as a green light to push forward quickly, trying to secure clarity or accelerate reconnection. But emotional processes rarely respond well to pressure. When someone is rediscovering their feelings, they need space to understand them without feeling cornered. Moving too fast can make them retreat again, not because the feelings disappeared, but because the pace felt unsafe. There's a quiet confidence in allowing connection to rebuild naturally. You stay warm, you stay open, but you don't overinterpret every signal. This grounded response creates a psychological environment where honesty feels easier. People reveal themselves more freely when they don't feel rushed toward a conclusion. Another subtle indicator is emotional availability in unexpected moments. She may reach out when something reminds her of you, or share something personal that doesn't strictly require your input. These moments often happen spontaneously because missing someone increases emotional accessibility. You become a mental reference point again, and that naturally brings you back into her communication patterns. But it's important to understand that missing someone doesn't erase whatever created distance in the first place. Both realities can exist simultaneously, the feeling of absence and the awareness of past challenges. That's why behavior might look warm, yet measured. It's not confusion. It's emotional integration. She's allowing herself to feel without fully deciding what those feelings mean yet. Your role in this dynamic isn't to decode every nuance. It's to maintain emotional steadiness. When you respond with calm presence instead of urgency, you signal something powerful. Connection with you feels safe, not demanding. Safety is what allows unspoken feelings to eventually become spoken ones. What makes this phase emotionally intense is the sense of possibility. You can feel the connection rebuilding, but it's still fragile, like early morning light, soft, promising, but not fully bright yet. If you approach it with patience, it can deepen naturally. If you try to force clarity too soon, it often fades back into distance. The men who handle this moment best don't focus on controlling the outcome. They focus on matching energy with awareness. They reciprocate effort, but they keep their emotional center grounded in self-respect. That balance prevents them from slipping into overinvestment while still allowing connection to grow. Because when someone starts missing you, what they're really doing is reevaluating your emotional significance in their life. And reevaluation takes time. It's not a single realization. It's a gradual recognition, built through repeated moments of feeling your presence again. The shift may be quiet, but it's rarely accidental. Attention always follows emotion. There's a moment in every reconnection where the emotional tide quietly turns. Nothing dramatic happens, no grand confession, no sudden declaration, just a steady increase in emotional gravity. You can feel it in the way interactions begin to carry more meaning than before. Conversations aren't just exchanges anymore. They start to feel like bridges. When a woman misses you but hasn't fully admitted it, she often begins seeking emotional reassurance without directly asking for it. This doesn't look like obvious neediness. It looks like subtle invitations, sharing something slightly more personal, lingering a bit longer in conversation, reacting more warmly to your presence. These are micro steps toward emotional closeness, and they happen because missing someone heightens sensitivity to connection. From a psychological perspective, this is the stage where internal conflict softens. The mind starts reconciling distance with attachment. She may still be cautious, but there's less resistance than before. You might notice fewer gaps in communication, more willingness to engage, and a sense that she's emotionally there rather than simply responding. One of the clearest signs is consistency. Not intensity, consistency. Intensity can be fleeting, driven by mood or circumstance. Consistency, on the other hand, reflects emotional priority. When someone begins to show up reliably, it's often because their feelings have moved from curiosity back toward significance. But here's where your awareness matters most. When connection begins rebuilding, it's easy to slip into old dynamics without realizing it. Familiar patterns feel comfortable because they're known. Yet real growth happens when both people bring new awareness into the reconnection. This means staying emotionally open without abandoning the clarity you've gained from distance. Another subtle shift appears in how she responds to your emotional tone. When someone misses you, they become more attuned to your mood. They notice when you sound tired, when you seem excited, when your energy changes. This heightened attentiveness comes from renewed emotional investment. Your emotional state matters to her again, even if she hasn't said so directly. You might also feel a sense of ease returning, that natural rhythm that existed when connection felt effortless. Ease is often the byproduct of emotional familiarity. It's the nervous system recognizing something safe and known. And when ease returns, conversations flow without overthinking, laughter feels spontaneous, and silence doesn't feel awkward. But remember, missing someone isn't the same as deciding to rebuild a relationship. It's an emotional signal, not a final conclusion. And the healthiest way to navigate this phase is to stay rooted in the present rather than projecting into the future. Let behavior reveal direction. Let consistency reveal intention. What often deepens attraction in this stage is emotional steadiness. When you respond with calm confidence, not guarded, not overly eager, you create a space where honesty feels natural. People open up more when they don't feel they're stepping into pressure or expectation. Emotional safety is the soil where vulnerability grows. There's also something transformative about realizing you don't need to rush the process. When you're comfortable with uncertainty, you stop trying to force clarity. You allow connection to evolve organically. And paradoxically, that patience often accelerates emotional openness because it removes fear of being pushed. You may notice moments where she almost expresses how she feels. A pause, a softened look, a sentence that trails off. These moments matter, not because they confirm anything, but because they show internal movement. Feelings are approaching the surface, even if they haven't fully emerged into words yet. Your role isn't to pull those words out. It's to hold steady energy, warm, grounded, self-assured. That steadiness communicates that connection with you isn't a place of pressure, but a place of emotional balance. And balance is incredibly attractive because it feels secure. As this stage unfolds, you begin to understand something deeper about human connection. People don't just miss individuals, they miss emotional experiences. They miss how they felt being understood, appreciated, seen without effort. When those experiences stand out in memory, they naturally draw people back toward the source. And when you recognize this without trying to control it, you step into emotional maturity. You're no longer chasing signs or searching for certainty. You're simply observing what unfolds, responding with awareness, and allowing reality to show you where the connection is truly heading. Because when feelings return, they rarely arrive all at once. They arrive in quiet, undeniable shifts. Eventually, there comes a point where the unspoken becomes impossible to ignore, not because someone finally says the perfect words, but because the emotional reality becomes consistent enough that it no longer needs translation. When a woman has been missing you and the feeling settles into clarity, the connection starts to feel grounded instead of tentative. You'll notice it in the stability of her presence. No more unpredictable waves of attention. No more subtle emotional distance layered over warmth. Instead, there's a calm continuity, a sense that she's choosing to be there rather than drifting in and out. Choice has a different energy than curiosity. Curiosity explores. Choice invests. What's important to understand is that emotional realization often feels quieter than people expect. There isn't always a dramatic confession. Sometimes it shows up in simple consistency, regular conversations, genuine interest in your life, a willingness to make plans and follow through. These behaviors signal that the internal question mark has softened into something more certain. At this stage, your response shapes the future of the dynamic. If you meet clarity with grounded openness, the connection deepens naturally. But if you meet it with lingering doubt or guardedness, it can stall again. Emotional momentum thrives when both people move with authenticity rather than fear. That means staying present instead of replaying past uncertainties. There's also a deeper psychological shift happening. When someone acknowledges, even internally, that they've missed you, they often become more emotionally transparent, not necessarily through grand statements, but through small acts of trust, sharing thoughts more freely, letting you see their unfiltered reactions. Emotional transparency grows when someone feels safe enough to stop managing their image around you. You may feel a renewed sense of emotional balance, too. Interactions no longer feel like you're trying to interpret signals. You simply experience the connection. And that simplicity can feel surprisingly powerful because it replaces mental effort with emotional clarity. Real connection feels lighter, not heavier. Another sign of this phase is mutual investment. Effort flows both ways without negotiation. You don't feel like you're maintaining the connection alone, and she doesn't feel like she has to protect herself from it. There's a quiet cooperation that emerges, a shared willingness to explore where things can go without forcing outcomes. But the most meaningful shift is internal. You realize you didn't need to chase, persuade, or prove anything. The connection evolved because both people felt its absence and chose to re-engage with awareness. That realization builds confidence, not just in the relationship, but in your ability to trust emotional timing. Relationships that re-emerge after distance often carry a unique depth. Both people have experienced life without the connection, and that contrast highlights its value. Appreciation grows because it's no longer theoretical, it's felt. And appreciation is one of the strongest foundations for lasting emotional bonds. Still, the key lesson isn't about whether someone comes back or admits they missed you. It's about who you become in the process. Someone who doesn't panic in uncertainty. Someone who doesn't overinterpret silence. Someone who stays emotionally available without losing self-respect. That kind of presence changes every relationship you enter. Because at the end of the day, connection isn't just about being wanted, it's about being met, emotionally, consistently, intentionally. And when you operate from that understanding, you stop measuring your worth by someone else's timing. You simply recognize alignment when it appears. So here's something I want you to sit with. Presence x consistency. Think about the connection in your life right now. What answer comes up for you? Drop it in the comments. I genuinely want to hear how you see it. If this gave you clarity, like the video, subscribe for more insights, and share it with someone who might be trying to understand the silence between the words.